Hi everyone, thank you for inviting me to share my experience in grant proposal writing. Very often I'm invited to similar talks due to my track record in getting various local and international grants. To be honest, there's no magic in getting a project funded. It is all plain hard work with spirit of never give up. My success rate in getting a project funded is the same as everyone else. Typically, it is about 10%. Today, I'm sharing my experience not only as a grant applicant, most importantly, it is from the view of a reviewer, as I often serve in many grant reviewing panels at the university and also national level.
Before you start writing a proposal, there are 3 simple steps that you must follow. Step 1, read the application instructions carefully. Step 2, read the application instruction carefully again. And lastly, don't forget to read the application instruction carefully. It is very important for you to follow the instructions in the application guidelines of the grant call in order to increase your successful rate in getting a fund. Every funding agency or grant call has specific areas of focus on what kind of projects they are looking for, and the specific areas is often spelled out in the application instructions. So they will be the focus of your applications. Priority can be related to specific issue, approach, or target populations, and activities that will be funded in a certain years. So it is very important to understand the agency's mission. It is critical for you to know the funding entity's missions to ensure the critical need that you are trying to fill fits well within its missions. In the bigger pictures, most funders are looking for projects that can help the country or the world. So in Malaysia, it is often tied to our wawasan's MySITE framework or KEGA. And in terms of impact to the world, it is often linked to the United Nations SDG goals. Listed here are the examples that you can use in your proposal writings to see where is your project fits. And also, funders often look into a project that can develop new skills or capabilities which could become central to the career progressions or institutional reputations. In the guidelines, the selection criteria will be clearly spelled out to guide the applicants. The applicants can use that to shape or design their projects or activities to be carried out. Peer reviews will also use that to score and evaluate the quality of the proposals. So it is very important for you to fit into each of the criteria strictly to increase your chances of getting the proposal funded. So the criteria usually include the deadlines, the PI, the principal investigator, the grade of the PIs, or whether they are contract or permanent staff, the expert areas of the team members and collaborators, the grant durations, usually it is 2 to 3 years, and the budget limits, usually they will give a maximum budget limits that we shouldn't exceed that. And at the end, also, they will give you the expected output that the funder asked for. Example, ISI papers, how many papers is required, students numbers, either research assistant or postgraduate numbers, and patents, IP file, and things like that. So after reading the guidelines, you are now ready to start writing your proposals. A proposal needs to show how your work fits into what is already known about certain topics and what new paradigm will it add to the literature. You need to identify the research questions or problem that the research will answer and establishing its significance and the implication of the answers. So you have to start reading a lot before you start coming up with your project's idea. From there, you will identify the gaps, okay? So what kind of things is unsolved, and these are the things that you may want to look into. And then you can formulate some hypothesis towards the problem that you're trying to answer. And from there, you can construct research design in helping you to answer the questions. And at the end, you establish the importance of your study. And after that, you can put everything in place. Start with an outline containing important points and try to use as simple writing as possible. And make sure your writing is clear. And then after that, you can communicate with some experts, share with them your ideas, and see any other feedback from them. So after you have the outline, these are the things that you should look into it. First, you need to ask that does the idea address an important problems? And will the scientific knowledge be advanced by doing the projects? Does it build upon or expand the current knowledge? It is feasible to do, whether it can be implemented to investigate in my labs or in my hands. So these are the things that you need to consider before you start writing your actual full proposals. So once you have your idea ready, you can start writing. Most people start with writing the title, but there are also people start with writing the literature reviews and everything else, and they formulate the title at the end of it. So there's nothing wrong with either way. You can do any way that you feel fits. But the title usually represents the first impression that capture the viewer's attentions. So it's very important that you have a title that can fully represent the project that you are going to go after. So a brief, sharp, and attractive title, which will hit the point of what the proposal is about, will be what you need to consider and write. When I say short, it means it's best to keep the titles under 15 words. My title usually is about 10 to 12 words, no more than 15 words. So the function of the title should be something that can interest the reader, they can inform the reader, and the title also include the main subject of the studies. Some titles also include where the project is going to be conducted and when it will be conducted. These are optionals. So after you have your title ready, read it again to see whether it is correct, see whether it's clear, and if it's something redundant, you can start cutting off some words and make sure it's very clear, and also make sure it's complete and concise. These are the 4 questions you should ask yourself after you have the title ready. Next is writing the executive summary of the whole proposals. So this executive summary is a concise summary of the key points or the important points of your study. This part should introduce your research subjects to the reviewer and quickly capture their attentions. So this paragraph should describe the significant gap in knowledge that directly relates to the critical needs of the funding entity deal with. It should include the following information: the problem statements, objective, research methodology, expected output or implications, and the significance of the studies. So executive summary is where usually the reviewer will focus on, because it is just summarizing the whole proposals. And when the reviewer run out of time, usually we are given away tight deadlines. This is where the focus is. So it is very important for you to write a very good executive summaries, summarizing the whole proposals. So after you completed the writings, you should again double check whether you have every points. So these are the questions that you can ask yourself. So what is the problem? So this will be given in the problem statements. And which aspect of this problem will you solve? This will be in your objective. And what would you do is in research methodologies. And what does it mean? So this one will be answered in your expected output, implication, and the significance. So nothing here in the summary that is not in the main body of the text. So everything here should be also included in the main body later on when you write the other sections one by one. It usually have a very limited words counts. Usually 300 words, so you need to follow the guidelines strictly in this case. So here is an example that is taken from my own proposals. So this is the executive summary that I have written, And as you can see, after I finish writing, I again ask myself the 4 questions and trying to see whether I have answer for all these 4 questions. If you have everything, it means your executive summary is very complete. So then next we'll come to the main body of the proposals. We will start with introductions. Usually sometimes it will be called as a research background as well, or literature reviews. So the introduction sets the tone of the paper by providing relevant background information and clearly identify the problem that you plan to address. So think of your introduction as the beginning of a funnel. Go from the broad context of your work and tell the reader what is already known and to what is not yet known and what the problems are and what you decide to do, which is at the end you will reach to your specific goals. So you should formulate the research questions very clearly and give examples or explanation on what the problems are and what the issue that you are trying to address in this whole project. Usually how we stimulate research questions is we always start with a broad topics and find out some relevant studies, and then we narrow down to the specific niche that is not done yet, and that will be your research focus, and then identify a practical or theoretical research problem that you will address. That will be your research questions. Once you have research questions ready, you are ready to write your study aims or objective or the goals. So this is the most important part of a proposal. So you must quickly gain the reviewer's trust and confidence whilst simultaneously convincing them that your work is so important to fund. Your specific aim can be one of the most difficult sections to write. So you should formulate your research aims carefully. Give explanation and to what problem or issue they are trying to solve and why they are worth exploring. So in the research questions, you also need to produce some hypothesis or a tentative answer to the questions and some solution to solve the problems and why you start your projects. And from there, you can start formulating your specific aims or objective. So usually we will have about 3 to 4 specific aims, and that should result in something that is measurable. The objective should be resulting in something measurable, and they're also able to be researched where you can test it, where you can test your hypothesis. And usually we refer to the grant priorities when we write these specific aims. Make sure it fits onto the grant priorities. So this page here usually limits to just a few sentences, not more than 1 page. And very importantly, you can close this section with the significance of the study, which means after you achieve all these objectives here, what is the implication of this study, how important it is. And then you move on to write your methodologies. So you must be able to convince the reviewer about the credibility and achievability, practicality and reproducibility of the research designs. So the objective here is to convince the reader that the research design and methods of analysis will be correctly addressed, can be used to solve the research problem. Okay, so give away clear descriptions of your approach, and the approach should have a reasonable chance of meeting the topic's objective. So the approach also must be innovative, not just a routine testing. So the proposal's capability to implement the technical approach, whether you can obtain the people and equipment needed for the task, is also important. And then you should organize these sessions according to your specific aims, which means for each of the aims you have certain approach to fulfill it, and then describe the experiments under that specific objective. Here is examples taken from my own studies. Usually I will start with the objective and then I will list out all the approach needed for the objective one by one. And methodology also include the samples, population, study types, sample size determinations that is calculated to do that, sampling techniques, including selection and exclusion criteria, and also ethic applications. Either if you deal with humans, you must have a medical ethics ready, or deal with animals, you also must have animal ethics ready. And tools and source of data collections, statistical methods used to analyze the data, pilot study, whether you have any pilot study or ongoing study, you can also include in the methodology sections. And is there any limitations, things that you cannot do in your lab and where you can do it? Things like that should be included in the methodologies. And we usually will also include a flow charts summarizing the whole methodology. It will be an easier way for the reviewer to understand your methodology flow. As I mentioned, sample size can be calculated using online software. There are so many of them you can find from internet. And also you need to come up with a timeline, how many years is needed, and each month what would you do in these projects. So clearly tabulated it out, and in the timeline you can also include milestones. Usually they will include 2 or 3 activities for each milestones, and for a project which is 2 or 3 years, it will usually cover 4 to 6 milestones. So usually a good milestone is quantitative, has a quantitative endpoint, which can guarantee the success of the project. So you are actually trying to convince the reviewer that there will be certain time point where you can finish certain part of your studies. So set reasonable dates for achieving your milestones. This is one of the examples of the timelines, listed all the activities included in these studies and at which months you will be doing what activities, and then the milestone is also clearly listed in this table, which each milestone consists of a few activities. So you can also summarize your milestone in another tables to make sure the reviewer can see each of your milestone clearly and at which months you can fulfill the milestone. Then come to the budget sections, which is the section that I often very interested to do, because this is where you can imagine that you can utilize the funding on the actual things that you need for your projects. So budget usually is divided according to a few votes. In this example given here is votes given in the Malaysian funders. Vote 11,000 is for salary, and then we also have votes for travel expenses, render votes, research material, which is used for consumables, maintenance or for repair services, and lastly the equipments. So break down the cost as much as possible to demonstrate that your budget is comprehensive and well thought out, and ensure that you have not overlooked any items, include everything that you need for the projects. And very often now the funder require us to submit the quotations for equipments, especially, or items that require a big amount of budgets. So they will ask for quotations to support your budgets. Then come to the almost the last section of the proposal writing, which is the expected result or the output. It is usually very obvious. The number is usually already determined in the instruction guidelines. So this is where you make the promises. How many students you will produce from these projects, how many publications, and what are the resources or capacity buildings that will be generated from these projects, and the patents or IP. Okay, so in this output here, you can also include economic benefits such as short-term project employment, long-term employment, and skill developments, and social benefits such as non-financial positive outcome for the target groups. For example, preservation of historic resources, increased community confidence or public educations, recreational space, and preservation of wildlife habitats. All these are the potential benefits that you can list out as outputs. The last part of the proposal is usually the references. We always use APA format. It is a standard format for a lot of proposal writing and also scientific writings. So you have to follow the format very carefully, including a small full stop or bracket or the italic, non-italics of the wording and things like that. You must actually carefully look into it. This part here will include all the references that you utilize for the whole proposal writing, including the introductions, methodology, and other places that you refer to other articles. So you must list all the articles out. So other than that, other than those required in the main body of the proposal, we will also sometimes submit a cover letter together with the proposals to briefly briefly summarize your idea and also the benefits of your projects and etc. And some funders also require letter of support from the institutes or the collaborators to make sure the collaborators are really involved. And it will also ask for the CV, especially the principal investigator and the team members. Equipment list, those equipment that are available in your lab or in your collaborators' lab, or equipment that you need to buy new in these projects. So it's sometimes required to list it out. And also the funder may ask for your previous publication list as well. So that's the end that what I can share with you how to write a proposals. But just barely writing the proposal is just the beginning of getting your project funded. So proposal writing is different from other scientific writing, for example, writing to a journal or articles or news articles. So writing a proposal is more than that. It is almost like doing sales jobs. You need to sell your projects. So a project proposals help you to stand out in the sea of competitors. A very well-written project proposal allows you to showcase your unique value propositions. So your project proposal should be an honest marketing document. It is a job to inform the reader and get them to buy into your projects. Emphasize the importance of your study so that it will be funded. You should not misrepresent the facts. So making statement that you know is untrue or fabricating research data or citing non-existing resources, it is a disaster. It's something that you should not do because the reviewer are all from expert areas. They will find out eventually and your project will not be funded. So be as honest as possible on what you can do and convince the reviewer that you are the best person to carry out the projects. Stress the benefit of the proposal and demonstrate that the proposal have been well thought through. So, and you also must know that reviewer often review many applications. So make your application easy to read and easy to understand. You do not need to use flowery words or grammars to get your project funded. So as simple as possible, scientific writing is always go for simplicity, concise, and as short as possible. So the proposal should be able to capture the reviewer's interest and draw them to the key points. Okay, get them on your sites. That's very important. Get them to buy your projects. So very often people think writing simple is very easy. Actually, it is the reverse. Simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clear and make it very simple. Very often after I completed my proposal writing, I will again read it to make it simple, use simple wordings, cut off redundant words, and whatever is repeating, I also will cut it off at the end to try to shorten my proposals. So it is all worth it at the end, because once you get there, you can move mountains. There are common reasons why certain project is rejected. I list out a few here, but it could be more than this, right? So first is lack of impact, or the impact is not strong enough. The significance is not very obvious, or sometimes it's too ambitious. A project is too big to cover in certain years. So if you propose a project that need 5 years to complete, and you propose it to be completed in 2 years, the reviewer will know it's not possible, then you will be rejected. And also unclear hypothesis or not rationals. And sometimes it's because the track record of the principal investigator or team members are very weak. So it is actually advisable to add in as many team members as possible to cover all the areas needed in your projects. And also there are projects not funded because it is not feasible to carry out in the institutes, or there's no certain machines available to complete the projects. And sometimes the approach is wrong, so it's not appropriate. And sometimes it's rejected because of poor writings, simply because of poor writings. So what is the advice to write a successful grant writing proposals? There are few advice. Start writing early. So this is very important because writing a proposal needs times. So many of our researchers always wait for last minutes when the grant announced, then they start writing the proposal. To me, it is too short. Usually the grant announcements will be only like 1 month earlier. So you will not be able to beat the deadline if you rush to write your project's proposal in 1 month. So you should have your proposal writing earlier, maybe 2 or 3 months before the grant announcements. Usually we can roughly predict when is the grant call is by looking at the previous grant calls dates. Then you can start writing 3 to 4 months earlier. Try to develop a good idea, read a lot of the literature review, and try to see what kind of gaps, and provide a good presentations. After you finish writing your proposal, usually you'll be called to present your projects. So prepare your presentation earlier as well. Try to proofread your presentation many times before you go for it. Align with the reviewer criteria is all in the guidelines. Identify your collaborators early as well, because sometimes collaborators also have other commitments, so you need to inform them earlier. Seek advice and feedback from your colleagues after you finish writing your outlines or even your proposal. You can actually share with your colleagues to help to seek their advice. Polish. So there are many rounds of polish before you get a perfect proposals. So you'll be glad you did it at the end, because the more perfect the proposal is, the likely it will be funded. If your project is not funded, it is not a big deal. So try again. You are in good company. Many of us fail, and the reason we get the project funded at the end, maybe because we have submitted the same proposal 10 times after polish and revise it. So know your options. There are many grant calls available besides just that one. Try as many places as possible. Get advice from experts and regroup your team members. Look for new expert areas that is not covered in your proposals that fail to get funded, and add it in. And then reapply many times until you get it. So I would also like to share with you the funders available in Malaysia. So usually funding is given by two ministries: Ministry of Higher Education and Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovations. So under higher educations, these are the funding available. Usually, most often we can hear grant call for FRGS, ERGS, PRGS, TRGS, and LRGS. So each of these type of grants has specific areas that they are focusing on. For example, FRGS focus on fundamental research, PRGS focus on prototype developments, TRGS focus on transdisciplinary research, and LRGS usually is longer terms and it is look into multi-institutional collaborations. And funding from MOSTIs, including those projects that have potentials to go into commercial products. So there are also many type of funds available, depends on how mature is your products. So they call it as a TRL levels. So TRL 2 to 4 levels means you have some products but it's still in the lab base. So you can apply for this apply innovative funds. And TRL, also TRL 2 to 4, same level, there's also another one to go forward for commercializations, called as a Technology Developmental Fund 1, and the 2 is targeting at TRL 4 and 7, then TRL 7 to 9 is those products that's ready to commercials. It is called bridging funds because it's usually connect the academia with the private sectors to commercialize the products. And there's also a special funding for COVID-19 to combat COVID-19 for mostly. Other funding from other ministry available as well. They are available in other from other agents as well. So you can look into the website for more details. There are also many international funds available, for example, NIH funds, the Fogarty International Center at NIH, and ORTF fundings, Newton Fund, Wellcome Trust, Longitude Prizes, and from Japan's Nippon Foundation, and International AIDS Societies also giving funds, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations, and the EU. So that's all that I would like to share. And if you like to have further knowledge on proposal writing, these are a few websites that you can refer to.
Thank you for your attention. I hope this presentation will provide you with a few useful tips for your next grant applications. All the best.